one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Councilor Bowie is not here tonight, and Councilor Kraft is excused, so I will take attendance. Councilor Cody?
Here.
Councilor Kraft and Councilor Bowie are excused, as I said. Councilor LaRochelle?
Here.
Councilor Lunt?
Here.
Councilor Mason is here, and Councilor Pomelo? Here. Twyla, first item, please.
First item is public hearing, a vitulers license for Kelly Goki, doing business as TNA Variety.
Okay, I'll open that public hearing. Any comment from the public or council? Okay, any questions? Okay, we'll close that public hearing.
Next
Twyla,
item.
next item.
Vitulers license for Pauline McKinney, doing business as Polly's Dogs.
Okay, I'll open that public hearing also. Question or comment? Close that public hearing, Twyla. Next item, please.
Pawn shop license for Dan Miller, doing business as Double Diamond Pawn.
We'll open that public hearing. Any questions, comments? We'll close that public hearing. We'll move on. Twyla, next item, please.
Under consent agenda, order 2010-134, to approve a vitulers license for Kelly Goki, doing business as TNA Variety, a vitulers license for Pauline McKinney, doing business as Polly's Dogs, and a pawn shop license for Dan Miller, doing business as Double Diamond Pawn, and the minutes of July 20, 2010.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as written.
Okay, Councilor
I'll second
Pomelo.
it.
Right, Councilor Cody. All those in favor? Okay.
Order
thank you.
passed, 5-0.
Next, Twyla.
Under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances, order 2010-135, the 2009-10 carry forward and transfers.
Jessica will address this. This is what we do every year after the auditor has been in. We then just balance it out, and she will give you the update.
Hello. I put a carry and transfer sheet in your packets. Hopefully you guys all got those. We did have a revenue shortfall this year, with the main area being state revenue sharing, as you all have been well aware. This was largely offset with the excise tax revenue. Investment interest was down, and we have not received funding from the state for general assistance as of yet. There is one revenue carry-forward request for the amount by which Beaver Park revenue exceeds its budgeted amount. And this amount is turned into the Beaver Park Admissions Fund. You'll see that at the top of your carry-forward request sheet. For the most part, your carry-forwards are limited to your grants, capital projects, equipment, and outstanding encumbrances. We are looking to carry forward the following amounts from their applicable lines or departments as noted on your spreadsheet. So we have the Beaver Park Admissions Fund of $2,629.50. Town buildings of $8,500. This is an outstanding encumbrance for the energy efficiency matching grant. We have an assessing carry forward of $4,000. Economic development of $11,945.16. This is the Thanksgiving flag, Moxie, and revitalization accounts. And I forgot to mention the assessing is for the work being done by Bill Van Tienen. Town clerk, we're looking at $10,016. This is for the purchasing of the ballot machines. In the police, we have $16,830.34. This is for their grant programs and higher reimbursement. Within the fire department, we have $70,692.24. This is their capital reserve program. Under town engineer, we have $299,648.41. This is in relation to the 2010 bond issue for the Route 9 up and Androscoggin River Trail. Solid waste, we have $3,400. The Parks Department, we have $18,471.77. This is their, the wreath account, the woodlot, and the admissions. Under the rec department, we're looking at $19,862.14. This is for the grant programs and new programs that are run at the rec department. General assistance, we're looking at $4,661.59. This is for heating assistance in the Giving Tree program. And under bond issues, we have $420,834.99, and that's in relation to the 2009 bond issue.
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
Why is there actually a different account for the park revenue versus Parks Department? I mean, is that broken apart for a particular reason, or?
The park revenue is what is brought in at the park when people go to visit the park, and so what we do is we just carry that forward, and it gets turned into the admissions fund.
Okay, I kinda
under
thought,
the
yeah.
expense line.
I thought that's what you said on the 400 line for the Parks Department, with part of that was the emission, so I was kind
Part of it is, and it's made up of last year's park revenue.
Okay.
So it just gets carried forward into the expense line.
Grows every year.
It grows every year, but that's not considered one carryover because it's in one department, it's
Right.
actually separated.
Yep.
Any other questions or comment?
What's the 3,400 for solid waste?
That is for a, oh, I'm sorry, I did miss that. That was towards the, for the retirement of Roger Goyette.
Anybody else have any questions or comment?
I just want to know that 2009 bond issue you said on the bottom one, what was that for? Which project was that?
It's for the 2009 bond road improvement and, yep.
Okay.
It's actually the water on Route 9, not the road, right?
Right.
Okay,
Not the road.
yeah, the water piping.
I wish it was the road.
Okay, moving on with the transfers, we had some overdrafts this year, the largest ones being under abatements, Public Works winter account, and the legal expenditures. The total amount we are requesting to transfer is $171,569.69. We are transferring that amount from the following lines or departments as noted on your spreadsheet. We're looking to take from the retirement account $17,395.60, Social Security $8,473.40, Technology $3,458.86, from the tax collector $14,588.35, from the police department $38,727.03, Public Works $52,806.49, and from solid waste $36,119.96.
And that's pretty much just the balance of budget for the auditors to make sure everything comes out zero.
Yes.
And we roll how much into surplus?
In the surplus, we're looking at around 346,000, right around there.
Any questions or comments? Everybody set? Yes. I guess I'll entertain a motion, or is it just?
I'll make a motion that we accept the carry forwards and transfers for the 09-10 years.
Okay. The second? Okay, all those in favor?
Order passed, 5-0.
Okay, Twyla, next item, please.
Order 2010-136, U.S. Department of Justice 2010 COPS grant application.
Unfortunately, Chief Brooks had planned to be here, but he has a family commitment on both sides, in-laws and his mom, so he could not be here. But he did respond to the questions that we had about the funding if we were to happen to lay people off. And the response that we got from the COPS grant people was that the award is for a 3-year period, and if the town gets into a financial distress situation where we have to lay people off, we need to make sure we maintain documentation that's causing the layoff and get it approved, and no payback will be required. So if, say, within that 3-year period, 2 years into it, we need to lay somebody off, we don't get penalized for that, we just have to reimburse the last year. If it's during the 4th year, and the town retains that position or is into a situation where we have to have layoffs, they will have to apply for a retention exemption to that office, the COPS office. And again, financial information has to be provided that we are actually in a financial distress situation. And the COPS grant would be, the request is approved, there'll be no financial penalty, but we may be told that we cannot apply for this grant for a period of 3 years. So we don't really get punished financially. So in that case, it's sort of a win for us, but like Brian and I were talking earlier, if we got into where we had to lay somebody off, would we lay them off and then also that particular officer? So we might lose 2 people, which is something we didn't really think about, we weren't aware of, so.
Still one more than we had before, though.
Yeah.
I don't think adding police officers after putting a bunch of school teachers on the street, it sends a very good message to the townspeople, no matter how or what way we do it. I think we sent a pretty good, clear message last year that we were going to cut and then turn around and add a position is not where we'd want to be, should we get chosen for this grant.
I don't like the idea of binding our hands. It seems like even if they can, we have to go to them for approval and file paperwork, and if they say, no, we don't approve you, I don't think that's enough of a hardship. Now, what do we do at that point?
Yeah. With, may I add to that? One thing I know that if the school had an opportunity to get teachers on a grant for free, they would grab them because, that's one thing anything that you can get with the stimulus package, just kind of, if you look at to me, when I look at stimulus packages over the United States, it's out there, it's going to be given to somebody, so it's kind of crazy not to take the opportunity if the money's out there free. Reading through some of the information and, some of the guidelines, because I had asked Steve about a little more information and also Chief, and financially, nowhere along the line would it actually hold our hands. And worst case scenario, if we would just say, hey, look, we could no longer, keep this person, there actually wouldn't be any financial bind to us. The biggest penalty we would have for actually not keeping an officer throughout the 3 years or the 4th would be the idea that we couldn't actually apply for another federal grant through the COPS for 3 years. That's pretty much the penalty. So the idea of actually having service for the town of Lisbon for 3 years for free is really hard to give up. The hardest thing is the application. It's kind of like fly fishing out on the Androscoggin. We're just one of many people trying to get that grant. So, but the offer to be able to me, the idea of being able to get something for free, for a while is definitely ideal. And then come the 4th year, if we can't actually afford it, we actually put in the hardship paperwork. If we don't get approved, then we can't reapply for 3 years. That's pretty much the downfall. There's no money commitment, payback, or anything like that. So again, it's hard to. With most of the stimulus stuff out there, you're kind of crazy not to try to take advantage of it, because if you don't take it, then someone else is going to, which, again...
It's not really free money, because you are, obligated to that 4th year, so, you got to be careful thinking free. It's like free for, 90 days kind of thing at the store, but you still have to pay someday, so...
But if that 4th year comes and you can't pay for it, it basically just goes away and there's no actual...
Yeah, I don't trust the feds, though. That way, we've had trouble with, federal government before, and they're pretty mean when they get on you, so...
I thought Steve said that there is a possibility of having to pay money back.
No, there is no penalty for financial penalty. It says here that if you do not get penalized financially, there's no payback required. But the only penalty you have is that if you do it, then you won't be eligible to apply for the grant for 3 years. That's the only downfall. So you're getting, one way I'm looking at it, is you're getting somebody at 25% of the cost for 4 years. All you're ponying up out of a 4-year period is 25% of that cost. That's a pretty good deal.
And I look at it then at 3 years, if we can't afford it, we just don't carry it on. But, not saying that's where the program's designed, but it's hard to say what we're going to be like in 4 years.
I think the message is, I agree that somebody will get the grant. That's evident. With grants, people get them, somebody gets them. But I just feel that the message we're sending is that we've had hardships, we've cut back teachers, we've cut back different things, and people don't always understand how these things work. So to take it on and then have to apply and then possibly lose out, I just think that the economy is just still so sketchy that it's difficult to take somebody on even knowing it's paid for and all of that. You just don't know what's going to happen on the other end, so that's my opinion. Any more comment?
What was the clarification on the questions we asked about the union being involved?
There's no language in the contract stating anything to do with the grant employees.
We have applied for this before, haven't we?
I think we have, yeah.
Do you know how many times and if we've gotten it and who that officer, not that it matters who the officer was?
I don't know offhand. I think it was prior to me coming here, and that person is still here as far as I know.
May I add to that? The last time we actually thought about applying for it was for 2 police officers, and we actually decided not to go for it because we didn't really know all the details. That's kind of where we're at now. Now it's down to 1, so.
This specific one grant was for towns or cities who applied last year, and they didn't have enough funding to even get anywhere close to the number. So this specific grant was for those towns that did not receive it last year. So it gave them a chance to get in the running with fewer communities. And we still, there's no guarantee that we're going to get this. I mean, there are still quite a few communities applying for it, so.
And we have to make a final vote on this tonight. I wasn't here last time, so
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
we voted on it last time, and nobody really understood what they were voting on. I guess they didn't realize it was a personnel addition. So Mike wanted to bring it back and make sure everybody understood what they were voting on and understand that it was adding a position to the police department that would be funded for 3 years by this grant, and the 4th year, we would have to put that person on. And this is where the question was raised in the contract language. There's nothing in that. And what happens if we cannot afford to keep that person? And this is the answer to that, that if we could show there's a hardship and we're laying people off, then we could eliminate that position with no financial penalty, but we would not be able to apply for the grant for 3 years. That's the summation.
So the vote needs to be taken tonight?
Yes, I would, I don't want to put it off. The application was submitted because we did not have an opportunity to vote on it prior to the deadline to get the application in. So if you're not going to approve this, then you need to vote against it and say we choose not to just apply for this, and so we can write the people, the COPS people, and say the council does not want to apply for this grant.
I'll make a motion so we vote.
Okay,
I'd make a motion that we accept the move forward with the COPS grant.
okay. Anybody want to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor? What?
Comments for the public?
We don't always take comments from the public, but if you'd like to step up, if it's something pertinent. Yes? I'm sorry.
I guess I have 2 questions. One is, and it's unfortunate the chief couldn't be here because he's probably the one that can answer it, but I think it reflects on your decision. With a full-time position being funded with other money, is that going to free up budget money within the police department budget for overtime and part-time hours since you've now got a full-time person coming in?
No, it will not.
Why wouldn't it?
We have budgeted pretty tightly for just the staff that we have.
Right.
And we are down 1 police officer
Right.
as it stands. So all we're doing is basically filling that. It would be probably, this would have to come in at a patrol officer is the bottom of the ladder, and we probably would move somebody up to fill a detective position, because we are very short-handed right now on that. We're down to one detective. We used to have three. So we didn't fill a position last year, and we have a position this year we did not fill. So it would probably just move a person up. That's what would be
So
what-
with the current budget then, just so I understand, the current budget we have based on the force that we have, by gaining this one person, we really wouldn't see a savings over the next 3 years from a budgetary standpoint.
No, I wouldn't think so.
And that's where I guess I would expect to see, that we would see some savings with money coming in from somewhere else to fill that position, since we've already counted for that. And it's unfortunate that any department has to lose a position, but I would expect to see the town save some money over the next 3 years if on the fourth year, we're going to have to potentially look at that. And it does concern me that the language says that you have to submit proof of financial records, because do they then decide if that's sufficient proof?
Yes.
That concerns me.
May I add to that also? And I did ask the same question. I said, geez, are we going to have some payback over the next 3 years over time? And I agree that, there wasn't no straightforward commitment that it would, but to me, another person coming on, somehow you could actually make that work some. And that's only me thinking about budget-wise. The other part that is really important to find out is, even if we just send in some lame letter saying that we can't afford it and they refuse us, there's still no financial. Basically, all it does is go from a 1 year to a 3 year. If it's approved, it's a 1 year, slap on the wrist saying you can't reapply for the grant. If they say, your letter wasn't consistent or didn't actually meet the criteria, it's just 3 year. There's still no financial reimbursement. It just goes from a 1 year if they approve it to a 3 year if they don't approve it.
Yeah, I caught that part, but I also caught the language that said you had to submit financial documentation supporting that as well, and that concerns me, that you're also having to back up our accounting and financial records, or whatever the reason is that they gave for needing to lay people off. I can't remember the exact language that was read off, but there was specific language to it, but that part of that was you had to submit your financial records. That's a little concerning, that you can't just send a letter. It's not actually just a letter. You're sending proof of your town financial records to say, this is why we can't afford this person. That kind of alarms me, that that's part of the language tied into it. And it, like I said, I guess for me, from a personal standpoint as a taxpayer, if this position's being paid for by 3 years under grant money, I would expect to see a savings on our end somewhere, just to help budget and even things out, so.
I agree.
I'll add another comment. I'm assuming that the figure that we have here for the 3-year wage and benefit is presented as $186,024. So if you break that down, it's $62,000 a year. That's not, in my opinion, accounting for any wage increases. We just looked at that. So when we're looking at budgeting in the fiscal year 2014, 2015, we could be looking at a much higher rate, because this figure here doesn't account for, next year's pay increase, the following year's pay increase, the third year, and then the fourth year when we assume that total cost. We could be talking close to $70,000. It says wages and benefits, yes. So,
Exactly.
right.
Okay, let's move on to our vote. The vote was made, you know what I'm talking about. Fern,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say, and Lori, and I guess we were down to those four, or those against.
Those against, right?
All right. Had we made a vote? Had anybody raised their
I
hand?
think we made a vote for, actually,
Okay.
it was, I believe.
Okay,
four,
so
wasn't it?
all those in favor, all those against?
Okay. Order doesn't pass, it fails 1-4.
I'd like to make a motion then that we move to not accept the grant or direct to write to the people and inform them that we're withdrawing this grant application.
Your motion's to write to them to withdraw the
Well, to inform them
application?
if we need to, that
And that
we're
would
withdrawing
pretty
the
much be
application.
done with the vote that we just made, correct?
Right, we know what it
Yes,
is, yeah,
okay.
make sure that
So there's
we're-
really no reason to take another vote. Okay, let's move on. Twyla, next item, please.
Order 2010-137, marijuana dispensary moratorium.
I'll let Steve handle this, because I wasn't here last time for this either, I'm sorry.
According to state law, the council needs to adopt this is an ordinance prohibiting the marijuana dispensary facilities until it's 180 days, until you have an opportunity to have healthy discussion about whether you would prefer to have it in this town or not. The folks that were interested had called and said they were going to attend. They called this afternoon and said they would not be attending. They, at this time, did not have a site that they were interested in Lisbon, but they still were looking and wondered if they, what this was. I said, if the council passes the ordinance, then it will be 180 days, and what they decide to do from that point on is, I don't know, but it's, I'm not discouraging them from coming. We want to welcome all businesses. Chief Brooks and I talked about that today, and he has no concerns about the security, because what they have to do is pretty intense and pretty expensive to maintain that. So at this time, I think what you need to do is take a vote, put this back on the agenda for a public hearing, because it is an ordinance, and then come back and have your first reading. I don't think it's nothing here that says that it's not supposed to be handled any other way. Take effect as of August 3rd.
I think this is something we ought to review a little more closely.
Yeah, I agree.
because
We need to.
We may be missing the boat.
And if you have questions
be.
tonight, Roger will be here for the union discussion, so you can ask him questions on this as well tonight. But we can table it until then.
I think you'll find other towns and cities have had the same types
Yes.
of problems, so to speak, because nobody really knows how it will work and how it will be dispensed, and will it be safe, and all of those things, so I guess we just need to move forward with what Steve just mentioned and discuss it further, and as Roger said, we may be missing the boat. It may be something that's lucrative to our town and/or helpful to our town, so.
Also, the way everything is going in this country right now, I'm kind of wondering if maybe it won't be legalized in the future, and we may be a forerunner of it.
You never know. You never know. So, I'll entertain a motion that we move forward with this moratorium as mentioned, and as Steve mentioned, that we will ask questions, bring it to a public hearing, and institute it, I guess, is the word, as an ordinance. So, anybody want to put that motion forth?
I'll bring forward what you just said.
Okay, all right.
I'll
Anybody
second that.
want to second it? All those in favor? All those opposed?
Could I just ask that the folks that are looking to do this maybe come and provide an educational session, either to the council or on tape or at the public hearing, so that we're as informed as we can be, because I think there's a lot of unknowns, and we may be stabbing in the dark here
Yep.
on this. So I think the more information that we can have prior to getting to our final session where we put.
They had provided the code enforcement officer with a packet, and I assumed that they were going to bring something tonight, because they did ask how many counselors we had and what they should bring, so, and I'm not sure why they chose not to make it, but they did. But I'll make sure that they can hopefully be here to answer any questions. Okay?
Okay, Twyla, next item, please.
Order 2010-138, tax commitment.
After your workshop last week, Tuna and Pat and everybody had an opportunity to discuss where we are in the land revaluation and what happened with that, basically based on land sales being very few, and then looking at both land and building sales, and where we are in the process. After that meeting, he spoke to Pat and recommended that what we do was his first option, which was to increase take the values of our real estate and personal property and bring it up to 80% of value based on the numbers that we currently have on the books, not with a new building schedule and not with a new land schedule. And that information won't be bad if when we move forward with the listed measure and implement it, it'll still be good data. So this will allow Pat to have more opportunity to validate his records, which we've had a lot of that going on with things aren't quite as they seem in the records. So, and that way we have, it's more accurate, fewer mistakes will be made. And I know during that process on last Tuesday, he talked about a 3-month extension, and he probably could finish it up, but we need to commit taxes. Our cash flow is always, we do 2 tax collections, and it's based on when we need our cash flow to operate. So What we're going to recommend, and Pat will probably move forward with, is to increase the values to 80% of value, and then that will shift everything up, everybody exactly the same, and it'll bring the tax rate down. We're looking at somewhere between $20 and $21 per thousand. It does create a bit of a shift, and we still are going to see a little bit of an increase in what people pay, just for the fact that we have lost, our homestead exemption has gone from $13,000 to $8,000, and we've lost revenue over the years. We're down to $2.6 million, which we were at $2.8 last year, and also you've seen the reduction in the homestead exemption from 13 to 8. So, and our expenses have gone up. So it won't be substantial, but it will be, I gave you some examples. If it was at $21.50 at 80%, you're looking at somebody with a $100,000 or $97,000, $100,000 home at 80% would be $97,500. You back out the homestead, you're looking at a tax around $1,924. So you're seeing a bit of an increase. But these numbers, again, we don't have all of our numbers yet. We still have to do our tree growth and veterans numbers, and we still have to do some cleanup on the personal property stuff. But we should be prepared to commit taxes on time at the end of this month, which is next week. So I think that makes perfect sense, what Bill had recommended. Buys us the time, and we can still move forward. And I will plan to, my recommendation is like Bill had said, and Pat, is we continue to move forward and hopefully be able to budget for our listed measure, so we'll get people on board next summer and move forward with that and get the valuation done and up to date, so we can be at 100% and have the opportunity for residents to question and ask questions about the property if they don't agree. But
I personally don't have a real warm and fuzzy feeling about any of this, Steve. We've got a lot of properties in town that are already valued at a much higher than what they're actually worth, and moving it to 80% is just going to increase that ratio even further. I understand the situation we're in, but it sure doesn't seem like this is the proper way to do it.
This is a recommendation from people who are experts in this field, and from our own assessor. I think it's the right thing to do. It's not, you're not rocking any big waves like a reval would do, where you're shifting values from one house that's different into another, where it goes up and down. You're basically staying the same. Everybody's being increased at the same percentage. We're getting up to 80%, which is where we should be. Above 70, I don't think we'll be exactly 80%, but it's a step in the right direction to getting us reval and everything up and running.
So I have a question for you, Steve. Under this proposal, would we be putting out our taxes, at the end of the month here?
Yes.
Instead of delay? Okay, good.
Yep, we'll be on time.
Excellent.
May I add to that?
Yes.
The way the tax stuff is pretty interesting. We had a workshop the other night, and the more you think you understand, the more confusing it gets. But basically, kind of going back to what we did the other night and talked about it, one of the biggest reasons we've been pushing for reval is just the evaluation of the town right now is so low. It's at 56%, and legally, we're supposed to be at least at 70, supposedly. I'm not sure about legally, but by the state. Moving it to 80 at this point in time, I think would be an injustice if you don't move forward over the next 2 years and actually go out and visit every home and try to balance it off. Because that's our ultimate goal, is to make sure it's fair and equal for everybody. But by doing this, at least it's a point of meeting our requirements of the state, trying to get a little more homestead for the homeowners. And it's a step in the right direction. We're getting the information. The downfall is any other way we do it, we haven't got enough information to make it fair for everybody either. So you really, to me, unless you visit every home, it's not going to be fair.
That's
You know
right.
what I mean? So I think that's what we need to do over the next couple of years. To me, I think this is an important first step to get us to 80%. And again, bringing everybody up equally means that tax rate drops equally, and, it's going to be different for some people. One thing I was mentioning to Steve before is regardless of what we do this year, people's taxes are going to go up regardless if we do this 80% or not. Biggest reason being is the state's actually giving back less money, I mean, for the homestead. So, I mean, that means you're going to pay more.
In revenue sharing.
The town actually voted this year for a bond and for a couple bonds, which actually increased that debt, which actually we got to pay more for. So no matter what we do, your tax bill is going to be higher. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that at this point in time, besides the idea of trying to make it fair. And that's what we're trying to do. What I ask, and even with personal property and everything else, is once everybody gets a tax bill, is if you don't understand it, please ask the questions, because there is explanation on how this all works. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to understand, but there is an explanation, so hopefully we'll move forward, and we're just trying to do it in a fair way without actually abusing anybody, and I'm not sure if that's easily done, but if there was an easy way, we would have done a long time ago, right?
That's right.
But there's no easy, cheap way of doing it, so I think we're going to try to do it the best way we can.
I think with 20 years of not have been working on this, and it's difficult to change, but it's something that just, it needs to be done. And to Roger's point, those people that do feel they have overvalued properties have the right to come in and ask for an abatement. So, it's up to the citizen that does have a problem to come in and ask. And as Fern said, it may not seem totally fair, but as a town, we've got to adjust it somehow, and it's either raise taxes on the other end or raise it across the board. So I understand everybody's point, but it's something that's been lax and hasn't been done for a long time, and we're trying to play catch-up right now, so.
Can I ask a question just to see if I understand
Yes.
this correctly? I did listen to the workshop, but of course you can't see this on here. So in 2009, 2010...
This is a better one to look at.
You have a home value of 100,000 with your homestead exemption, your taxable amount is 92,000, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so coming forward to 2010, 2011, that same $100,000 house is now being valued at 130,000,
Yep,
with the homestead exemption would be 122.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yep,
And so your taxes would go from $2,365 on $25.50 per thousand to $21.50 per thousand at a tax value of $2,623.
right.
So you're looking at an increase of about $258.
If it comes in at 2150.
Okay.
Like I said before, we have not finished all the revenue numbers and tree growth and veterans exemptions and things like that. He's still waiting on some questions he had on some personal property, some of the bigger operations here in town. So he's validating those. Everything will be done by the end of next week, so we can commit. Pat was hoping he'd get down by 20, and we may, I don't know, but our goal is to get it as low as we can and meet our commitments and our overlay, so we can function and have the least impact on taxpayers. It's like Fern was saying, this year, you saw a 2% increase in our operating budget, most of it being based on healthcare increases as well as bond debt, and then you saw a decrease in revenue sharing. We were 200 and some odd thousand short this year. We had predicted we'd get $1 million, $200,000 more or less than we thought we would get, and unfortunately, it's even worse. And so we've only budgeted $750,000 for the upcoming year, and that, we hope we'll meet that. I mean, but revenue is a shot sometimes, especially with the state government. You don't know what's going to happen. So we have a revenue shortfall on the revenue end, and we have an increased expense side. So things are going to go up. Can't control that to a degree, but so it will impact, I hope, will be the least as possible for everybody.
Any question or comment from council? Any citizens have question or comment? Dot?
Putting the valuation up 80% across the board, I can see a lot of inequities here. Some properties have decreased in value. The homeowners just haven't been able to keep them up. We've had a few new subdivisions since our last revaluation in 1988. I don't know how those homes were valued. Some in one particular subdivision I'm thinking of, the home prices are, the homes are being priced very high, $250,000 up to $300,000, and I don't know how those are assessed. Not looking at the assessing card and not, scrutinizing every one. How were those assessed? What percentage of the value? So putting up 80% across the board just doesn't seem right to me. Some homeowners have improved their properties considerably, and like I said, some have, property values have decreased. I just see a lot of inequities here, a lot of dissension, and I'm on the Assessment Review Board, and I'll tell you, I'm really considering seriously resigning, because this is not going to be pleasant, it's not going to be fun, it's not going to see a lot of, probably more people not being able to afford to pay their taxes, and there are quite a few as it is. I had a really hard time coming up with mine this past fiscal year, and I'm expecting even a harder time this coming fiscal year, and I know that I'm not alone. Any comments from you people?
Go ahead, John.
The biggest thing is that, unfortunately, we have to move forward in some aspect of it. I realize your concern, and as we spoke to you tonight, and I believe you were there, I mean, if we were to stop right now, I do believe it wouldn't be fair and equitable to everybody, but moving forward, the information we have over the next 2 years and actually visiting every home and actually reevaluating, I think it's going to be a long process. In the short term, I don't think the information we've got for house sales in the last, short period of time that they're doing assessment would actually work well for the other options we had at this point to come up with a percentage. The only real good way of doing it is just to do a total reval of the town. I mean, but unfortunately, as everybody knows, we've tried multiple times, and it gets voted down every time because it's a very costly, $300,000 to $400,000. So I think this is the best opportunity we have to meet our requirements. One of the things that, not just our requirements, but one of the good things of getting it to 80% is actually people are going to get more of the homestead exemption, even though the state cut it back. There is some different ratios there, but
it won't be this year, will it? This coming fiscal year, will we see the homestead exemption increase this fiscal year?
I couldn't give you the answer. I mean, I would assume that there's a lot of numbers that go along with that, and every time I think I know what I'm talking about, I get proven differently, so I'm not going to respond to that.
State has reduced the homestead exemption from 13.5 down to, or 13,000 to 10,000 this year. At 80%, the homeowner gets $8,000 off the cost or the value of their home. So they're gaining a little bit there. I think last year at 56%, they only got $7,200, I think $7,250. So the homeowner is gaining a little bit. At 80%, we're probably going to get a little bit extra back, but
the state's taking more back than that they're going to receive. So, I mean, it's still not going to be fair. It's still not going to equate fairly, no matter how you look at it, because the state's still cutting back what they're giving out. So, even if we went to 100%, it still may not be a fair, swap. So,
I don't recall what the tax rate was this past fiscal year.
$25.50.
$25.50, and you're looking at how much this fiscal year?
Well, we're
the next one?
estimating.
Estimating.
At 21 to 21.50, 20 to 21.50, somewhere in between.
So the tax rate will go down a little bit, but not too much, not very much.
Not until we have a real handle on what we have out there for properties and what the values are. And that's something that we're going to have to continue to work on. Pat has been out in the field just to try to get accurate information on some of the cards that we have, because some of the cards are very incomplete. So he's already in that process of doing some of the listed measure just because he's trying to get enough data that's accurate. But
And
he can't do the, 4,000 to 5,000 homes by himself. So what we had budgeted this past year, we had hoped to bring on people for just 3 months, part-time people, wouldn't have to pay them benefits, wouldn't have to do a lot of that, pay them so much per lot, and they go out and they do ask the questions with their clipboards, take the measurements, take the style of the house, does it have a deck, does it have a garage, all these questions. And if you can get the homeowner's home, you'll get accurate numbers on how many bathrooms, but that's a very time-consuming and job, and one person can't do it.
How about the commercial properties? We've lost the night seller tax. Did we lose tax income from that? And are we starting to get back tax income from the new company that's bought it?
The new company that has bought it has paid their taxes up to date, what they owed. They have not given us, we're not going to lose any value on the property itself, but we did lose personal property. They've moved a lot of equipment out of there last year. So we aren't going to, and Pat's already been in the building to document what they have, so we know what's been taken out and we know what we have. So we are losing some personal property value there.
And then the Titus filling station was torn down, so we lost some tax revenue there, but I see new construction going on there, so hopefully we'll be getting some.
Yeah, we won't gain that until next year.
Right. The Warumbo Mill, we're losing some tax revenue from that. Are there any other substantial businesses that we've lost tax revenue from?
The old Food City building you did, I don't know what the tax was.
That was just real estate.
Was it just?
Just real estate. Not that we know of at this point.
Yeah.
We have some questions out there to some companies, and we haven't got answers yet, but we will have them before tax commitment, and we very well could lose.
How about the TIFs, the businesses that have had
TIFs?
TIFs? Do the taxes increase, their share of the taxes, does that increase every year till it comes up to their full?
Value, yes.
How?
That shifts every year.
What percentage are we on some of those?
I'd have to look. They're all over the place.
They're all different.
They're all different.
Thank you.
Any more public comment? Counselors' comments?
I think just to address some of the concerns there, that I think one of the weakness of just doing the 80 is that we're not fixing the equity problems that are already there, as has been said. But the strength, at least, we're not creating any new problems. There's not going to be new disputes over, you change the value of my house versus my neighbor's house by a big amount, and that's not fair. And so that's at least, I think.
Yeah, and that's what I think Mr. Van Tynen felt that was one of the reasons why it was best to do it this way until we had a better handle on
Because we need
what we
hearings
have.
and stuff to get people a chance to.
Right, and that buys us that time as well, which I think is necessary for citizens.
They may have,
There's others that are going to say, well, my property was already valued at 80%, now you're increasing it again, and...
I think, as Gina said, the best solution is to go to the tax assessor and say, my house is in really bad shape, why I'm overvalued at, it's not worth the 100,000 you're saying, and, show them that, and show them proof for other houses that sold that, and try to argue for a reduction.
No, I'm thinking some of the newer ones and then some of the newest, really nice subdivisions.
But if you paid 300,000 for it, then it's hard to argue it's worth 200,
may I add one more thing to that?
Sure.
One other thing, just to be I think is important before you go forward with this, is 80% isn't just a magic number out of a hat. I mean, it was a goal that we're looking for. The work that's been already done by the people we hired and by our own tax assessor, actually, with the real estate's been sold, and the properties and the lands, actually comes out to these numbers. So statewide, we can actually prove that 80% is a legitimate number, that where we need to be above that 56. So hopefully, hopefully it doesn't sound like we're just picking a number and going with it, and I'm not saying that's far from the truth, but we have data behind to back up that number. So when we go to the state to actually commit our taxes and the number, we have ways of showing how we came up with that 80%, and it's, by the sounds of what Bill was saying, it's legitimate
It's very legitimate.
numbers, so.
It's actually lower than what he thought we,
I just didn't want to make it sound like we were picking a number and going with it, there was.
Because at one point, we actually had talked about trying to get closer to 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
And so 80 is a fair compromise, I would say.
I think with some of the falling real estate values, you don't want to overestimate and charge, 100%, which is now, a year from now, that'll be, 110%.
Right.
It's a fair-
And Doc, the only fair way, as several have said, is to go to each individual home. We didn't have the money and we didn't have the time to do that.
No, I realize that.
And it seems unfortunate, I know, but we're doing the best we can to fix years' worth of not fixing things.
I didn't miss a town meeting when they were asking for money for a revaluation, so I'm aware of this.
Yeah, you well know that it's been several times that we've tried, and it's just one of those things that's there, and it's something we have to take care of, so.
May I have just one more thing also?
Yes, quickly.
Quickly. One of the good things, there's a lot of stuff coming out with all the going into the computer. The downfall of a card is if you buy a $300,000 home, and years ago, the jury put the information down on the card and was put in there. If the house was just abused for 10 years, the house devaluated, the roof's leaking, the windows are cracked, or just not kept up, there's really no way to revisit that until someone went out, because a card never adapted by itself. The new computer systems that we're going to have will automatically do that over a period of time. So if you buy a home for $100,000, live there 50 years and never get a permit to fix anything or never change the windows, it will automatically adjust down so the house is kind of devaluating, if I'm correct, to a certain point, right? So the software system is going to be a little bit more friendly to make some of those adjustments. Yeah, so it's kind of like going out and buy a brand-new car. When you get your first insurance bill, you don't mind paying the high insurance bill because it's a brand-new car. But if you never call the insurance company, 5 years later, you could be still paying insurance on that brand-new car. So again, it's some things you got to make sure they adjust as time goes on. And unfortunately, I don't think we've had the software in place, but now I think it will be a lot easier to go out and make those changes. And hopefully, 10 years from now, they'll be able to do this much easily than doing all the adapting that we're doing now.
Or you buy a house for $80,000 and do a lot of interior renovations, and nobody peeks in your windows and sees it, and all of a sudden it's worth maybe $180,000 and nobody knows it, so.
A marble floor adds value? No, never mind.
That imported stuff, evidently, right?
The one thing that kind of gives me a little burning sensation is that we went out and spent money to reevaluate supposedly properties and stuff, and that all hasn't seemed to have done a lot of good for us. It was like money spent for nothing at this point. I just don't like the feeling or the smell of this thing at all.
But I think, Roger, that when I just mentioned the idea of validating the 80%, that's where those numbers came from, is the money that we spent for doing that homework. That's kind of what we got for that money that we spent, is to be able to go to the state and actually validate the 80% being legit.
We could have done that, according to Mr. Timothy last week, that we could have done that right without even doing any of that.
You still got to have some validation behind it, but.
I think that money would be, towards what we're going to do next year with, the list of measure and that kind of stuff that helps us set up the
We
systems
were
there.
told at the workshop that we could have gone right to the state right off without doing any of this cost to us, and we never did it.
Right. But
So now
we're
we're further into the situation, and we're at tax time, and we have basically been spinning in the mud for the last 3 months for nothing at this point. And I have a little bit of a heartburn with it, because we're representing people and the people's money, and I'm not real happy about spending it the way that we're spending it. Would I
we could have
support
spent,
that?
Roger, we could have spent $300,000 for $8,000
Which we
that
should
you
have
spent. No question about that.
I
But
think we should have.
You weren't allowed to do that by the public.
No.
So for $8,000, you got somebody to come in here and do your land evaluation, set up your land schedule, and at the same time, because of the way it worked in the marketplace, we did not have any land-only sales. He had to also do a building schedule based on sales of homes. So you got quite a bang for your buck for $8,000, and that data is still going to be valid. The schedule is all in the system. So when we finish, the next step is just to get your real estate, your list and measure, to make sure you're accurate, and you'll be at 100%. I think that was money well spent, and $8,000 is a far cry from the $300,000, and even if it took half of that, you got a heck of a deal.
Well, it was a professional assessment from an outside source. It was somebody else coming in.
That's right.
And assessing what we have, very unbiased. And I guess it wasn't exactly what we should have done, and we know that a full value would be the best thing to do. But as Steve just said, it's kind of put into place that hopefully when we get to that point someday, a lot of this information's been compiled, the computer system can be put into force, and there's no good situation here. Whatever we do, the taxes are going up, so. Okay, I'll entertain a motion that we vote on this.
No, you don't.
We don't vote on it.
We don't, no.
No.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay. Let's move
Right.
on.
Let Steve do what he needs to do, there you go.
Pat does that, so he's the assessor.
All right.
He commits the taxes. We just guide him.
We'll guide him, yes, we just gave you your roadmap, right?
Right, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. Twyla, please.
Next item is Order 2010-139, bid for a 1995 Jeep.
The fire department had a 1995 Jeep that they took off the road. We put it out to bid to the public. We had two people bid, thank you. One was Teresa
Good luck.
Acolytus, maybe?
Acolytus. She bid $525, and Dwayne Conan bid $169.69. It wouldn't take a sticker. The floor was rotted out. Are you looking at all the bids, Roger?
What is going on with these bids? You've got a same person bidding $445, you got another person, the same person bidding $525? It's like, just a minute, I gotta call to get this bid updated. I mean, what is going on with this?
It keeps going up, that's a good thing. It's
We
not going down.
blame the chief for just saying he was bidding higher, so. It's just, we don't know why that happened, but at the end of the day, her final offer was $525, and that was the high bid, so.
Well, I'd make a motion, we accept the bid for $525.
Okay?
Changes her mind.
It could go higher, right?
Yeah, if she wants to give more, we'll take more, okay?
I have a question before we vote, though.
Sure.
Did Chief Galpo actually make a bid? I didn't see a bid from him.
No, he didn't. No.
After expressing interest, he changed
And
his
actually,
mind.
Buttons was gonna bid, and he decided that he didn't.
Stay out of the card game, huh?
Stay out of the game.
Okay, we have a motion.
A second? Do you need a second? Second it.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor? Okay,
Order passed 5-0.
all right, next, Twyla, please.
Under other business, Finance Director's report.
Hello. Being the first month of the new fiscal year, not a whole lot to report. We're still working on getting the data for July into Trio, and trying to wrap up year-end with the auditors. So at this point, I really have no projections or data for where we will be at the end of fiscal year 11.
Okay, thank you.
That is cool.
Next item, and I'm going to let you take this, Twyla.
Nomination papers for the November election. We just wanted to let the council and everyone know that the following terms expire this November, and there'll be vacancies for people to run in these positions. For Counselor at Large, Counselor District 1, Counselor District 2. For Budget Advisory Board at Large, District 1 and 2. For School Committee, there's 2 positions, and for Water Commission, 1 position. Papers are available on or after August 9th, so this is after August 9th, so you can pick up papers at our office anytime at this point. Papers need to be returned to the town clerk for filing on or before September 20th at 4:30 p.m. Currently, we have papers circulating from George Karen, running for the school committee, Tracy Austin, running for the school committee, Gina Mason, running for counselor in District 1, we have Fern LaRochelle running at large for counselor, and Bill Bauer has circulating papers running for the Water Commission. Okay, so that brings you up to date today.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's move on.
Next item is Maine PACE Efficiency Maine.
Another federal program, you have some of the documentation. This is a energy efficiency loan program run by Efficiency Maine, which is part of the Public Utilities Commission. In order for each town to get involved in this, we have to do another ordinance to say that we are willing to approve this. The nice part about this is that we have nothing to do with it from the minute after the ordinance. It's a third-party agency through the PUC who does all the paperwork, administers all the grant, all the loan money. It's a real good program. It's good for the public if they qualify to do energy improvements on their home. So I will bring that back to you for a public hearing at our next meeting. But so just look it over, and
I must admit, I didn't read the whole thing. Is it low income or elderly, or?
it's based on income, I think, part of it.
Is it?
Let's see. This is actually approved by the legislature, so.
I did have a question about that. On the very last page, it does talk about the municipality adopting an education and outreach program. And so my question was going to be, on the heels of you saying that we have no more responsibility other than, adopting the ordinance.
The
is
outreach
do we
will come
have-
from our community director.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yep.
Right, so we should just read it and come back next time?
Come back with any questions that you might have, and it'll help, I think it will help a lot of the citizens here.
Okay,
Okay?
yes.
I'll bring that back to you.
Next item, Twyla, please.
Is Town Manager's Report.
You have, at the last minute, I didn't get it onto your agenda, we had finally got all 3 bids on the well drilling on Route 9. We got an affordable well drilling bid complete, $5,200. Temple well drilling bid, $8,900. C&R well drilling bid, $5,925. Our recommendation is to go with affordable well drilling at $5,200. And we can get started on Mr. Upham's as soon as they can get there.
Do we need a vote on this to
Yes,
get
you
this
do.
start?
Yes,
Okay.
it'd be good to do that.
Well, how soon will this be taking place, Dave?
I don't know that. I'd have to, we'll call them tomorrow to get them out there. They've all been out to the site, so they all know where it was. And we told them we wanted to act as quickly as possible, so we got lucky that we got everything in tonight, so.
I just have a quick question. All of these are apples to apples. They all had the same,
Yes.
everything was the same?
Everything's the same.
And they saw all the same things and heard all the same, okay.
Ryan met them out at the site
All
and
right.
went through it with them all.
Because there is quite a difference in
Yeah,
a
there
couple of
is.
them,
That's
so-
why I question that, because we've dealt with others before and a lot less expensive than that, but I can't speak for
So
them.
I do have, for clarification purposes, we're going to vote to go ahead with drilling just that one well on the Upham property?
No, if you agree with this, this will be the person that will do all the well drilling when the people request it.
I think that there was still a question unanswered about closing off those other wells there, and I thought that we were going to be discussing that again in the future.
I remember that, but I don't remember if we got answered, if we
We
have to
never got
close.
answered.
I don't think we did, because that was
It was my
a
understanding
month
that we
ago, wasn't
couldn't
it?
drill a well without closing off the other
Yeah.
ones at the same time because of the potential of cross-contamination.
That was the geologist
Right.
information that he gave us.
Also, we had to wait for an answer on who was to pay for the
Oh, I
closing
have
of
that
the
answer.
well.
You are. You could,
Wow, that's great.
just you, Roger, no.
All close neighbors.
All close neighbors
Yeah,
contribute to the
close.
fund. No,
They go to Smith,
you as a
so-
council have the authority to go into your undesignated fund balance by charter for emergency purposes. So,
Well, the thing of it is that Gina brings forth a good point. If we're going to be punching a new well, and those other wells have to be taken care of. We don't want to cross-contaminate his new well.
That's right, yep. I will check with them. I know Ryan and I talked about that, but I didn't get an answer from him on that, so, today.
Yeah.
But I can find out. And I'm sure if there's a threat of that and that needs to be done, we'll take care of that as part of it. It may cost us a little bit more, but I don't know what they have to do, if they just fill it with gravel.
I don't know myself what
I
it is.
think somebody said concrete, but
Yeah, I
I'm not
think
a
they said
well.
concrete, but it was
One
my
One of the
understanding
wells
it
is
was
a
2 or
dug
more.
well at Mr. Upham's, I know.
Right.
BP's pretty good at that right now.
What's that?
BP Oil, they can show you how to.
Yeah,
But
look at all
one
kinds of
of,
ways.
there's 2 or more
Experience.
that needed to be capped off, and one of them I thought was as much as 440 feet deep.
I don't
And
know.
I thought we agreed that we weren't paying for that. That's not our responsibility, that he didn't properly cap them off prior.
I don't know where our
I think we're putting
responsibilities
the
lie.
cart
but
before the horse.
I do need to know that this man needs water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, we can find out. That's just a simple question to Ryan, if that was something that was part of this, or is that something, Roger, maybe you can answer that question, because you've been dealing with contaminated water
Excuse me.
more so than most of us lately. Are we required by law to cap off, or the wells that are contaminated?
I believe you are. If a well is abandoned, it has to be filled or grout put in it or something like that to make sure that you can't draw anything from it. There are several reasons why you need to do that. From our perspective, one is that if it's a contaminated well and you're drawing water from another well, it can draw it from the contaminated well.
Right.
So you want to seal those off.
But part of the situation with that, Roger, was that they had tried to drill a well. Wasn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, they were trying,
Wells on that site that
Yes,
were
they-
not properly capped off when they were abandoned originally. So there's the well that we'll be replacing, the contaminated one, that I say, yes, we are responsible for closing that one off properly. But there's other wells on the same site, 2 or more of them, because I think you had a total of like 5 wells on the site. There's additional ones that haven't been properly closed off, and the question came up as to whether or not we as the town assume the responsibility to close off those other wells, and I say no.
and from what I understood, they were in the drilling process, one didn't work, or they had to drill again. So those were never taken care of before this problem came about,
Those should be the homeowner's responsibility.
I thought.
However, we'll have to work something out because it's obviously to our advantage in terms of providing a new well, that it not be contaminated by the old ones. So I don't know how expensive it is to do that, but we can find out.
Okay.
But Mr. Upham's well, we can drill it, and we're going to have to test the water anyway, because we don't know if it's going to be contaminated or not, that distance. I know from his dug well was very high in concentration. The next one was quite a bit different, the artesian well he had. So we're hoping wherever they put this stake, it will be non-existent, but I'll find out for
Okay.
sure.
Dot?
Yeah, Mr. Upham, when he built his new home, he had a well drilled for that home. And the existing old farmhouse, when his sister moved back, retired and moved back to Lisbon Falls, they drilled a well. It did not produce anything, so the well driller moved a few feet away and drilled a new well, approximately the same depth, quite a bit, quite deep, I can't remember how much, 200 or more feet deep, and that only produced, I think, 1.5 to 1.5 gallons a minute, and some seeped from the first well to the second, so those would, I don't know how you're going to be taking care of those, but there is a good dug well on the old property, and there's another old dug well to the left of the old homestead, and I don't know how that is. But anyway, I spoke with Mrs. Upham the other day. I called, and he was not available. He was outside in his gardens or something, and I asked her how things were going, and she says, well, we've got 2 stakes in the ground, way down out back, about 500 feet from the house. She says, I don't know how they're planning on, if they get water, how they're planning on getting it up to the house. Do they plan on putting in a pump or something to get it up to the house?
And I think a pump is part of the bid
Yeah, I think-
process,
I
yeah.
think it's part of the,
I know it is.
Yeah.
It's got to be part of the process.
It is.
Well, you better
can see
find
it.
out.
A well is useless without a pump.
Right, our requirement is to get them water, so I'm assuming that what's in this price is the requirement to get
Yes.
them water to their home.
Well
Absolutely.
system
At this
include-
point, I wouldn't assume anything. I would want to find
Well,
out for
I
sure.
would, because we,
It's in writing.
It's in writing.
Okay,
Okay,
right,
so-
all right. Thank you.
All right, so. That's, we have to vote on it?
You have to vote on it.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion that we vote to drill Mr. Upham's well.
Oh, no, all you're doing is,
You
Vote on
just
the
tell
price.
me.
you're approving
Okay.
our recommendations, affordable well
Mr.
drilling for 5,200.
Okay, for the wells that we need to drill and we need to
And we'll
fix.
start
So-
with Mr. Upham.
I'll make that motion that we accept the affordable well drilling bid for $5,200 to drill the wells on the Route 9 site.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Okay.
We're past 5,
Okay.
sir.
Other things, as AvCog came out last week, and we did with the transportation planner, Joe Malton and Janet Cummings, we did a walkability study. We had done that in the falls, and this transportation, MDOT, approved $10,000, 5 of it for us, 5 of it for another community. So we are looking at Lisbon, and we will be doing that on September 23rd at 9 a.m., and it'll be a 3 to 4 hour event, looking at sidewalks, just how to improve the area, and I walked down through there with them, and we definitely have some work to do down there, so.
Yep.
It'll be interesting what we come up with. I met with a representative from Western Maine Transportation, and we talked about offering a Saturday service. Lewiston and Auburn are doing that. They have a lot of interest, and our numbers of people using the bus has gone up. So if people are interested in Saturday service, please just call my office and let me know, so we can get a kind of an idea of any interest. I will be away tomorrow and Thursday at the Maine Town and City Managers Annual Meeting. I'll be back in the office on Friday. The bids, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, the boiler will be replaced. It's on order for the Public Works Garage, as well as the installation will be started close to the same time, I think. And we're also looking at windows. The MTM board, we met last week. We have a young architect, student graduate, working on some plans to look at how we would improve the windows there and we have about $40,000 to spend on replacement windows there, so we're hoping to get that done before the winter and get that out and bid by September. The Campus Street School, there is going to be an open house there on August 29th. It's at the last festival or concert in the park. So and it should be before that. So if anybody's interested in doing one more tour through the old Campus Street School, this is your opportunity, because from that point on, it will be roped off probably, and they'll be gutting it and doing all kinds of work. Sewer clerk position, we were overwhelmed with applications. It closed on Friday. I said 35, but we actually had more come in late Friday afternoon, so we had close to 50 applicants, and they're all over the place. So we started reviewing some of those today, and did you get a chance to look at them? It's an interesting process, but we are hoping to start interviewing for that position next week, if we get all the way through it. And that's all I have.
I have a question. Doesn't pertain to any of this really, but the high school, has anybody talked to the school?
Yeah.
Wow,
Well, they're
Tracy, I can understand why Tracy's a little nervous.
I did find that the project was bid, and it was a general contractor who got the job, so he went out and hired his own contractors,
okay.
which was unfortunate, because we have a lot of local contractors who could have used the work. And that, I think, should have been part of the stipulation when they put it out to bid, that local contractors get used, but I wasn't part of that process.
I
so.
think I pointed that out early
I thought
on.
you did.
Yes, I did.
They have 13
So-
days, well, 12 days.
I know, but what I'm saying, are they going to be ready?
Yeah, well,
It doesn't look it to
it sure
me.
doesn't look like they are going to be ready, because they were just pouring the footings last week for the addition, so I can't imagine they're going to get the addition that quickly.
Well, it's
And they
the
stop
addition,
working.
you mean in new entry?
It's replacing, yeah, wherever they're replacing the portables, Isn't that part of that
No,
project?
no, those portables were just leaving. Pretty
Okay.
much what they were doing is, the only place I think they were pouring might have been for the new entryway into the main office.
Okay.
So there's no exterior
They were doing
buildings.
an awful lot of digging down at the far end of the building.
From going through part of that process, I mean, what had to happen is to put a new entry where they wanted it to, they had to divert all the groundwater away from that area. So what you're actually seeing is the contractors putting underground piping and water drainage away from where the main entrance is going to be, and they had to do that before they cut the hole and put the doorway in. So, I mean, I kept a little bit on it. I think it's, you see lights there. I mean, they're definitely, you go by there at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's people there working. So I think they know the deadline, and I asked the other day about the windows, because I was told the windows would be very close, and someone that actually works at school said they were stacked in the gymnasium already. So I think it's going to happen in big packages. It came apart big, and once they have all the insulation, the exterior trim kind of goes up in big segments, and the windows probably slide in. I mean, I think it's all designed so it all kind of wraps up pretty neatly.
Modular
Exactly.
type-ish.
Wraps up kind of neatly, which I hope.
We're hoping.
And they are already working on the inside. There is, I believe they do have a local contractor that is working on the inside to do finish, so I think part of it, that did work out. So, it's amazing. It just looks like a really big project for the amount of money that they had to work with, so hopefully that the money was stretched wide and thin, and I think it was, so.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Me too. I mean, it's going to be a big improvement. Whatever they do at this point is going to be different, because you can see, for the first time in many, many years, you actually can look at this school and say, oh my God, they're fixing something, so.
Well, people
Yep.
outside of Lisbon, it's rather interesting, you go to LA or Brunswick, they're saying, what is going on in Lisbon? Because they see a lot
A
of
lot of things
activity.
happening.
Yep.
And I says, well, things that are long overdue. So it's a good thing.
It is. Next, Twyla, please.
Audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Use the microphone at the podium.
Richard.
Good evening, Richard Main, Libby Street. Not having been on the advisory board for a year or so, some duties apparently have changed for the advisory board. It used to be that prior to any transfers and carryovers, that the advisory board always made a recommendation to the council regarding that. And I don't know when that change took place, and I think that also when appropriations involving sums of money are made by the council, that used to be something that the advisory board was asked about. Now, I notice that the chair of the advisory board, budget advisory board, is not here, but when did it change? What happened? Did I missed something?
You weren't here that night? No, I'm just kidding.
It all went out with,
We have, since I've been here, we have not brought anything for transfers and carries over to the advisory board. We didn't last year.
yeah, we did.
It was in the charter.
Yeah, it is.
Well, we didn't do it, Richard,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, and even the wells, I think, it's a protection for the council to have a second set of eyes looking at things. And I was just, I thought maybe it was me, getting old, the aging process or something, but,
It was the street light ordinance. Did it all.
I do got to say that the first couple of years, the first year I was on the council, one of my first experience was going through, and I believe you were sitting on the board at that time to go through, but for some reason, again, I almost didn't think that we did it for last year for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but it was, it seemed like it was a formality that we went through the first couple of years, but I'm not sure exactly when that actually, what changed or what didn't change with it. It would be something to look into. I mean, I do agree, it's always nice to have a second set of eyes to look through what we're doing, but.
I just guess if it's in the charter and the duties of the advisory board, it probably should be done. That would be my thought anyhow. And I'm wrong many times, so.
I'll check the charter, Richard.
Thank you. Anybody else? Dot? Go ahead.
If Mr. Maines is correct with that, does that mean that all of these transfers would have to go to the advisory board if are they illegal? Would they have to all be redone?
I guess that's something we'll have to
I'll have
find
to
out.
check the charter and check with our legal counsel.
My second comment is, in the newspapers, both Lewiston and Brunswick papers have been advertising a meeting tomorrow night in Topsom, the Maine Department of Transportation, looking at the Route 196 corridor from Lewiston to Topsom at 6 o'clock at the Topsom Town Office. I wondered if anyone, the town council, Mr. Eldridge, you said that you're not going to be in town.
Our city engineer is involved in that project, and he is planning on being there. We have already started contact with the MDOT probably 2 weeks ago. We're supplying them with the study the transportation study that University of Vermont did several years ago, so we're pretty active in that.
It's in conjunction with that.
Yes.
Yeah, because the city of Lewiston, if they could eliminate the town of Lisbon, they would just love nothing better than that.
Hard to get there. Without passing through here.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of hard to get there from here without going there.
They would like to bypass us, though, so.
Oh, well,
The river
yes,
does
Michelle?
go all the way there,
Yes,
right?
please.
Get a raft.
I had a question, and it goes back to the marijuana dispensary.
Yes.
You kind of went through it, and I didn't want to interrupt before you guys had moved on to the next one. And you had talked about having or scheduling a public hearing. Do you know when or anticipate when you're going to hold that?
Probably next meeting.
Okay, because one question I have, and it's going to take some research, so I'd like to be able to pose it out there to, I'm assuming at some point probably the chief of police will see this, or you guys can at least forward my question on, because I would like some data that he can actually draw. I will research it myself, but one of the concerns I have is my husband used to work near a methadone clinic in Westbrook. There's a documented increase in crime within that area. My concern, and I realize it's not an apples-to-apples comparison by any means in relationship to the drugs, but I do have a concern. We're trying to increase and drive people here to our town. My concern over a dispensary, and I realize we may miss the boat from maybe some financial aspects, but I'm more concerned about what the effect would be within our community. And if it increases our crime, that to me is more substantial than any loss of revenue we might see financially. And that's where my concern is, and I realize that it's very new within like the state of California, so there may not be a lot of raw data out there, but I'd like to know on the ones that are open in the states and towns currently, if they've seen an increase in crime within those communities. And I'd really like to know what some of those raw numbers are, and that's why I'd like to ask it now, so that he can maybe research that and make that part of the presentation at the hearing.
Chief Brooks had mentioned something about that today, and he said he did not think there was, and people would just be coming in, picking it up and leaving. So he wasn't too concerned, but I will see if there's any numbers there for you.
And
I think that's some of what, as I mentioned earlier, what other towns and cities have kind of struggled with, the crime aspect. It's like anything that could possibly be related, but I think that would be one of the issues, and I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah, just
I think that's why we want to get the planning board involved too, and,
Yes,
hold a public
and you know,
hearing
we need
see
to-
what people in town feel, where it would make sense.
And talk to other
Where-
towns and cities that are considering it, and, find out what the problems may be, and if there are any or none. So-
I think we can relate it to when we started out with our liquor stores, and they were state liquor stores, and
Yep.
now they've moved into grocery stores, so probably at the beginning, it's going to be a big thing to have, but ultimately, it will probably be legalized, and it'll be taken care of the same way the liquor stores did.
But I think, the whole process that we're doing right now is just under the cautious eye of what we need to do right now to make sure we can control it, so nothing actually happens automatically. It's kind of like, almost like the windmill ordinance that we put in, without having any guidance at all. It's really tough to try to restrict it or actually allow it, so I think moving through with this actually just kind of allows us to have the ability to really control it, so.
Right. It's just, I know it's the first thing that I want to know, because you don't want all the work that we've done with revitalization, with anything else, you don't want it to plummet, because when somebody Googles this town, again, it's going to be one of the first top 5 things on Google that's going to come up, and I just want to be cautious that we're careful with that.
Yep.
You would be surprised when somebody Googles your town, the things that will pop up.
Never thought of that.
Maine
So-
going green,
Be a
Wilson
mad
Falls,
rush
right?
here.
Yes, maybe we'll get a great influx of population or something.
I'm just saying that you would be very surprised at the things that will pop up depending on the time of year. If you would go in every 3 months and Google our town, I think you'd be surprised at what you would see and the things that change based on what has been out in the news and what's been publicized within that 3-month time frame. Or even Google some of the local residents and the things that pop up over the last couple of years. So, I mean, it's just one thing that I think you have to be cautious of, but I'm more concerned from a community aspect of maintaining where we are and trying to continue to better. And I'm just concerned, dealing with methadone patients myself and the case management that I do, again, I realize it's a different scheduled drug and different, not, apple to apple, but it is a concern that I do have because of
Good
that.
point.
Whether it becomes legal or not, that's down the road. I'm more concerned about the now.
Okay, and those are the issues we'll address, and if we don't have the answers to those questions at the public hearing, I'm sure that Chief Brooks can get them for us. Thank you. Any more audience participation? Okay, we'll move on.
Next item is councilor communications.
I have one. I haven't been, but I've heard that the concert in the parks have been really, really good. They've had a great attendance. There's been a lot of videos online, and they've had some good bands there, and it's really been an asset to our town. And the gazebo down there is looking great, and so I'm real happy with it. I know Ross is, and Rosie is.
Worked hard, and Rosie, yep.
So it's a great asset.
A lot of people.
Anybody else?
I'll just add, going back to the taxes and the reassessment of the town, I mean, when I first came on town council, that was one of the first things we were talking about. It's amazing how it just kind of talks about for years and years and nothing happened. So we're trying to make something happen now. Unfortunately, I agree with Roger, it's not going to be a perfect solution at first, but hopefully we have support over the next couple of years to actually make it happen. I know I was one of the people that didn't support it this year, so hopefully we can put the right plan in place and make it happen, because we have to, because it's going to be a long-term process to make sure it's fair.
Right. Anybody else? Okay, I move that we have a 5-minute recess, and then we have to go into executive session.
You adjourn
Is it,
first.
we have to adjourn first, and then,
No.
no, okay. So we can have a 5-minute recess, and then we'll be going into executive session.